But there's also parts of the world where a lot of those preconditions don't exist. And we found that, again, through partnerships, we're actually able to help accelerate some of the circularity enablers. Again, if I think about recycling, collection, and processing, we're an organization called Circulate Capital. They're Asia Fund, along with a large number of peer companies across CPG. And what we've been able to do is to, through that organization, invest to scale a number of recycling-oriented businesses, broadly defined, and about 270,000 tons of plastic have either been kept in circulation or handled properly that wouldn't have been otherwise in 2023 and before. So, those are things that really matter. And the last one's technology.
Yeah.
We found a lot of places where the solutions are known, but there's a lot of places, honestly, where they're not known or they're not yet cost effective. And so we've sponsored a greenhouse accelerator that has, most recently in APAC, had 10, there were hundreds, I think, in the application, down selected to 10. We gave them all $20,000. We gave them mentoring, and out of that we chose one winner. We gave them $100,000 to really help them come along, because we and everybody up here, we need those new technologies, we need those new partnerships, but that's something that by partnering with them we can do. So I think all types of partnerships are necessary. I always say sustainability is a team sport.
Yeah.
And we really need partnerships of all shapes and sizes all the way across the value chain to address all the problems, because we're really trying to change in those multiple systems along the way.
So Cedric, if Jim is right and circularity is a team sport, is it a harder sport than others to play in a team? Are you finding partnerships to be uniquely challenging, uniquely different? And if so, how? Or if not, why not?
Look, in construction, any project starts with the money. Second, the money. And third, the liability.
Okay,
right?
Fair enough.
To make sure that whatever you construct is not a crumble and fall. There is an inherent image of recycled material as being second-class materials,
Yeah.
of a lesser quality. If you are constructing a 20-floor tower,
Yeah.
it will have an impact. And why is that? It's because the standards do not fully recognize those materials yet. So in terms of partnerships, it's extremely important to be able to work with project owners that have that vision. I mentioned that social housing company, but for those of you who know London, maybe you know Canary Wharf. Canary Wharf Group, we partnered with them. And just to give you an example, there was on the site of one of the redevelopments a marine yard which was derelict and defunct. We demolished it, recuperated 100% of the cement and the concrete in there, reintroduced it into our process, our product, and what is delivered on site, and that was used for the slab for the entire site, on which they build a 37-floor building. Right? So this is large. So this is the type of collaboration that we need to have. And the collaboration is such, they're not going to go back. For them, this is the way forward.
Right.
This is the way to add value to their product, to their building, due to the labeling, because the circularity of the material gives them a higher label. So you have a high label, you have a high value of your building. So it's a win-win for everyone. And the other one, similar to what Jim says, the partnership needs to be with the local authorities or the standardization authority. Again, to do that project, we needed to get an exemption, because building codes you cannot circumvent or overgo building codes, but you can get an exemption. It's not ideal. It needs patience, it needs stamina, it needs a project partner that is ready to accompany you to do the testing. But again, it's possible. And that's really through partnership that demonstrate we can do it and it's possible.
Okay, so we can do it. It's a win-win. It's a team sport. We can make it happen. Let's talk about the messy reality, right? Because this is not as easy to make happen. And so what are some of the dilemmas, that you faced, some of the trade-offs that you face, some of the constraints that you see to scaling this up. Julie, Jim, one of you guys want to go first? Julie's got the mic, but
Yeah, I mean, I can go first, and I think sort of implicitly we've mentioned many of them, right? Cedric, you talked about the fact, for instance, that very often there is no incentive to get rid of construction waste in a way that makes sense from a circularity perspective, and that's a big disincentive for products to be taken back and to be deassembled and reused. The second thing, and again you mentioned it implicitly, is this lack of legal certainty around reused products. If we, for instance, install a 10-year-old Velux product, that will not live up to the current regulation, probably, because that will have changed in between, but it will still be a very high-performing window. Now, who bears the responsibility for the performance of that window? Is it us as the original manufacturer? Is it whoever inserts it into a building, so on and so forth? And as long as we don't have a framework that recognizes the value of these secondary raw materials and or products, then no one will use them, because to your point, nobody wants legal responsibility for that. Then the third point that we see is conflicting legislation. So we, for instance, are looking at streamlining our use of materials because that's better for the environment. It's also better for our purse because the fewer materials, the fewer solutions we need to find to source them and reuse them. But we then sometimes face dilemmas such as, do we want the material that's better for circularity, or do we want the material that's better in terms of decarbonization? Because we can't have both as it stands. We can have these properties or these properties, but we can't have both of them. And, depending on our choice, we will have a point in one camp, but not in the other. And that, of course, sits in the fact that this is very complex. We don't typically regulate for complexity. We regulate on one issue only. And so you've got lots of silos, one on energy and one on sustainability and one on climate and so on and so forth. And if we don't think these things together, then we can't make the smartest choices, because we're forced into an actual trade-off. Even if you can't basically do both good things at once. Yeah. And so we need to solve that. And there is a legislative point in that, there is a standards point in that, and there is a market point in that. But we need to come together and agree. And it comes back to my opening point, which is that one of our big issues is that we don't actually really agree on what it is to be circular.
Yeah. Well, given Jim doesn't have a microphone, I'm going to go to Cedric next, because Cedric, because you talked a lot about legislation, and Cedric, you give two examples where you said we had to get an exemption or an exception. How are you going to scale circularity in that context, and what do you need to be able to scale it?
It's going to take different forms in different markets, right? I'm in charge of government relations. I'm working a lot with the European Commission on their circularity policy. That's part of it. Yeah. There is and I'm not going to get nerdy in this discussion, but there is a certain standard in Europe that now says that you can, which did not feature before circularity, that now said that in concrete you can use up to 30% recycled concrete fines. That is the kind of steps that we need. Yeah. The other step is to collaborate more radically with local decision makers. We do not control the full value chain. The construction demolition waste does not belong to us. It needs to be sourced. You require infrastructure to transport and store this thing. You need to bring technology. Often you are in urban areas where you are limited in space. Because you cannot do that from 300 or 400 kilometers from where your construction site is. It needs to be in the immediate proximity. Yeah. So for all of that work, you need to have all of this clicked. And again, coming back, I think the biggest, it's not a messy reality. It's just a complex opportunity. It's the different kinds of partnerships that we can build. Yeah. And Jim, it's not my role at all, but I'm dying to ask you a question. Can I do that?
You're on the spot, Jim.
But part of your messy reality of the ecosystem in which you are is the circular behavior of consumers, which seems to be an impossible task. How do you address that?
I'll address that in a second, but I was just going to agree with both of you, and I think it's a really important point, which is if we're talking circularity, we actually have to be talking end to end, and the world is very rarely set up to work end to end. And therefore, circularity, go back to my metaphor at the beginning, it sort of goes and stops, right, as opposed to going around. So whether it's legislation or waste and waste management, those are things that are as relevant in our business as they are in Julie and Cedric's. So I think, real agreement and a consistent set of principles that cut across it. I think in terms of the consumer, it's the consumer's on a journey, just like everyone else is. And again, if you think about, we touch about 1 billion occasions a day of consumers around the world. And the reality is that very few of them have circularity as a primary buying consideration, right? Taste, price, convenience. And therefore, there's a very small group where it's a primary consideration, and the rest, it's, we often talk about the say-do gap, right? I say one thing and I do another. And there's, how does that gap get closed? But again, I think it's all the things we've been talking about end to end. It's legislation. It's the availability of infrastructure. Because again, we're talking about systems. How do I change? If I can't recycle, if I don't have access to curbside recycling, or I don't have access to the correct bins down the block, right? Even if the person knows what to do, even if they're motivated, it won't work. And that's one of the reasons why, from a policy standpoint, we're supportive of well-designed EPR systems like you do find in some European countries, because they actually start to approach it on an end-to-end basis. But I think the consumer is very early in that journey as well in large parts of the world, and we need the entire system to change. No one company, any of the three of us, no one company or even an industry can address circularity by themselves. It takes literally the entire system, and in most cases we're still a long way away from that, unfortunately.
If I may, that's I think you make a really important point there, because unless, unlike, let's say, Scope 1 CO2 emissions, as a cement manufacturer, I control them. It's in my cement plant. I know the technology. I know the input, the output. I control it 100%. The difference with circularity is that, as you just said, explained, it's part of an ecosystem, and unless the entire ecosystem moves, then it starts to be very complicated. And for us, it starts with the architect, the designer, the project owner. For you, it's the consumer is in the, so it's really an ecosystem.
Which I'd also echo your point. It's very local. Because it's not true in every country, but in many countries, actually, the infrastructure is very local, and the waste management collections are very local, and you actually
down to the city level,
yeah,
down to the city or village level. It's not even country.
Yeah, so I don't think that any of the government affairs folks are going to go out of business anytime soon as we try to get to circularity. Now,
sorry, could I just add something to that, because it's not quite Pepsi's, but I mean we decided to turn all our packaging material one material only, and we did that again to up our own sort of circularity goals. But the added side effect of that was that it became incredibly easy for people on a building site to get rid of that packaging material, because it was only cardboard, right? And so it goes a little bit to what you're saying. By making it so easy for the people to get rid of the cardboard, we also found that they then in turn got rid of more of that waste correctly. It also allowed us some savings. That wasn't the point of the project, but it did, because we're now only dealing with one material. But the point is, our effort here went into our own circularity, but the benefit was that because it was so easy to do the right thing, people did. And I do think that most people want to be part of the solution. They just want the solution to be only ever so slightly more complicated than what they have today. Otherwise, it's too much.
Yeah. All right. Well, you're starting us on our final question, which is, what is making you optimistic about circularity? We're going backwards. We're a long way from full potential. It's quite complicated. Why are you optimistic? Ever so briefly, Jim. Two mics at once.
Thanks. I'm two mics, right? I'm excited because we're in the final steps of the negotiation for the Global Plastics Treaty. It's in Busan. It's coming up, and it's a unique opportunity for the entire system, for the entire world. You know, believe it or not, business actually likes global rules, right? Because they provide clarity on the direction of travel. They help mobilize investment. They bring an industry and in many cases large multiple sectors within an ecosystem together, and they allow things that no one company, no one industry can do and do at pace and at speed. And so I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful, because we have this unique opportunity. And you know, again, we're part of the Business Coalition for a Global Treaty that's calling for a legally binding, harmonized set of standards so that the world and the players within it can get on with what we all at some level, everyone will conceptually agree needs to be done. But you know, I'm an optimist. I'm a pragmatist. I want to get it done, and to do that, it will require system change. And I think this is a unique opportunity to hopefully be able to get standardized, harmonized, and there's areas where there's lots of agreement. Design, product design, the types of materials that get used, and so on and so forth. I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that the world will seize the opportunity.
All right, well, we'll watch that space next year. Julie, what's making you optimistic?
Well, I think, Jim, you said most of it, but for me, the fact that we can see day on day that we get more requests in, sort of where we have to verify basically the specifications of our own products, to which degree their circularity, to which degree we use secondary raw materials, and so on and so forth, because that means that there's a real push through the value chain, and that is what will really make the difference. Because if we are all pushing, we're being pushed, we're pushing others all the way down to those sort of more sort of core materials, then the system will change around us, and that is happening. We can just see that inside the company. What's really important then, and I'm with you, we also love global standards, because what's happening at the moment, of course, is that there are a zillion different schemes out there then that we're then being asked to sign up to and adhere to be able to tender for this, for that, and that, of course, is an obstacle. So, you know, moving towards these international standards where we all agree what we want by when is very, very important. That work is happening. Could happen a little bit faster, but we're on the right track, and that's really positive.
And Cedric?
I'm optimistic because we're doing it. 2 years we showed that we could do 100% recycled concrete. Last year we showed that we applied it to a full commercial scale building, so we can do it. So that is what is really exciting. It's no longer just a lab case, it's large commercial scale with large scale investors like Canary Wharf Group that are demanding it, and regulatory framework and norms that go in the right direction. So it can only go upwards from here.
Well, I'm optimistic because you guys are all optimistic, because you're the ones literally at the pointy end of this transformation. And so thank you very much for sharing your insights and your examples and also your enthusiasm. It's a long road ahead, but may it be circular. Guys, thanks so much. Thank you all.